Right, you lot, and just drift of a year ago, I released a video where I kind of talked about the meaning behind my upcoming album, Progress Sega Progress, and I really enjoyed doing that. I thought it did quite well, and I feel like the reception from it was good, so I'm going to do it again for my next album, titled The Past, The Present and Future. Look at me, 11 months later, and I'm doing another one. I know, I've been working too hard, I tell you. Right, now this album I'm doing things a bit differently than the previous two. I've technically had two albums, but I don't class Made Out Alive as an album, even though it technically is, because there's 7 songs, which I didn't know that at the time, so it's quite annoying. So technically this is my 3rd studio album, 3rd one of course working in Broadburn, with Dakini and with Alfonso Arch. Now, I like to kind of change things up with each album and go for a different approach with it. The Made It Out Alive was very much an anecdotal kind of diary account, what I'd be writing in present tense, events that would happen throughout a year, and then in the end I called it an album. So there was a bit of cohesion there. The sound, it was very alternative, very rap based. Then Progress Sega Progress, it was an 18-song album which did not have a lot of cohesion. I described it more like a TV show where you had miniature kind of arcs and then small like side quests in the middle, and it was long, and there was a mix of genres there. It was mostly a pop album, but I did all sorts in there. There was dance, there was rock, there was drill kind of stuff I was doing with 2 feet. I did a dubstep track on there. Literally, I was throwing darts at a map. It was like one of those old YouTube videos and seeing what landed. And with that, I'm kind of taking this next album where, as much as I enjoyed Progress Sega Progress for what it was, and I think it was a big moment for me, I want this one to be more coherent in not just subject matter, but also sonically. The sound of this album, well, this isn't the case with all 12 tracks. There's 12 tracks, and I'll get onto that in a minute. It's a very much a country folk album, and it's what I wanted to do, the type of music I wanted to do from the start. There's not a lot of rapping going on this album. I think there's about 3 tracks out of 12 that include any sense of rapping. The rest, it's all kind of more vocal based, which I think I've just kind of evolved to that at this point in the music career, so I think that's what made sense with this. So the idea of the album, it's called The Past, The Present and The Future, because I felt this is my last year of course of school, going on to kind of the next chapter in life, college and adulthood and all of that, so I thought it's an album reflecting my life so far and then looking to where it's going to be in the future. And I came up with a great idea of 12 tracks, 4 songs dedicated to the past, track 1 to 4, 4 songs dedicated to the present, track 5 to 8, and then 4 songs dedicated to the future, track 9 to 12. Boom. So the track list was very easy to come up with, and it just made sense. I wanted to do 12 with this one because I thought 18 was a bit too many, but 7's too short, and I like kind of 12 to 16 range, and I think that's the range I'm going to go with for any more future projects. A lot of the themes of the album are about growing up, changes, and moving on from the past, and kind of using the past to strengthen your future, but then also clinging on to the past and that hindering your future. So it's there's a lot of continuity going on here, and what I'll do is I'll kind of go through each of the 12 tracks and give you an idea of not only what the song will sound like, but also what it's kind of about. I don't want to go too specific, so I'm going to keep it more vague, but I will do breakdowns on my 2nd channel titled Lewis Epic Content Mature and Honest, and there I will kind of go through each song lyric by lyric and really give you a deep idea of what those songs are about. I'll also be putting all the songs in Genius like I did with Progress as well, so if you're interested to really know everything about me, which I don't see why you would, but there's some strange people on the internet, so let's go on with that. So the opening track of the album is titled Long Ashton, which I kind of have a trend now with each album where I do one song where I don't say the title, so I don't actually say Long Ashton in this song. Long Ashton, the first place I lived, which I lived for 8 years, which is quite bizarre to think that was 50% of my life, and this track is a track about kind of childhood and that step to the future, that sort of thing, and it's like you're reminiscing on childhood, and it's kind of about when you're a child, you can make mistakes, and problems are solved easily because your problems are so minuscule really, whereas when you're an adult, problems don't always have a solution. There's a lot more complexity, and it's kind of that fear of growing up, but also that kind of readiness as well. So it's a very complex track, and it's a really great kind of opener. I think the sound is one of my favourite instrumentals he's done. It's very a complex instrumental. There's a lot going on there. It's a very folk sounding, got a lot of country, and I really like what I was able to do with this one. I think as an opener, it's a lot better than Undecided, and by the way, it lays out a good idea of what you're getting in for. So if you don't like the first track, bad idea to probably follow the rest of the album. Now there's probably something in there. This track was quite special as well because I was able to work with my friend Amel, who was able to do a verse in this song, and that's kind of a test to see future projects. And she doesn't get loads on the song, unfortunately, but it was great to kind of do a feature and to work on that. So it's one of my favourites. It's the third single. It's going to be when I'm recording this. It's just come out pretty much. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. Okay, then track 2 is titled The Shadow Man. The Shadow Man, a lot of my songs incorporate metaphors and have a lot of that kind of theme going on. So I wanted to further that with The Shadow Man. And it's a track about someone in my life who died when I was quite young. And of course, when you're a kid, you're like very upset, but you don't really get that kind of thing. And then it's kind of learning as you get older the reality of that situation and kind of their wife and how they dealt with that. And it's a very complex song, but it's also like a more fun one because I'm kind of poking holes of like, I know who you are, and it's one of my more fun ones I've done. So I really enjoy The Shadow Man. I think it's got kind of jive to it, and it was kind of hard to kind of work out the hook, but once I got the hook I was really happy with what I was able to do with that. And the chorus kind of changes with each connotation, so like the first verse is focused on me and my perception, and then the second verse is focused on the wife and their perception. So I got to write in other characters' heads as well, so I had a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of metaphors, there's a lot of imagery going on with The Shadow Man, so I really enjoyed this one. So yeah, it's a very kind of upbeat country track as well, so it's quite sick. The third track is called Heartbreaking. Now this was the second single as well. It wasn't always meant to be a single. My original plan was that the past would have a single, the present would have a single, and the future would have a single, but Heartbreaking was too good to not make a single. Heartbreaking is about kind of people you leave behind moving. Of course I moved from Bristol to Somerset, and that was kind of like you lose touch with people over time, and then you reconnect with them years later, but the bond and the connection isn't there because you've lived a lifetime pretty much, and you've both changed, especially in childhood because kids change so much. So it was that kind of sad reality. This one's more pop based and doesn't really have the country feel, but there is a bit of folk in there somewhere. And yeah, you probably heard it, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Heartbreaking. Now track 4 and the final one in the past section is called The Nightmare Neighbour. Now this track sounds nothing like the rest of the album. I do like having an outlier, and I feel like this is a big stunning moment. This is a more rap based track. It's a punk rock song, and it's something I wanted to do for a long time. I like trying out different genres, and I kind of said to the kid, can you do a punk rock track? And I didn't know how it would turn out, but I think it worked. This track is about a person, kind of an ex-neighbour who started as a friend, but as time went on, very much wasn't, and very much took advantage, tried to rip my family apart piece by piece, but we evaded it. And at the time it was very scary, that antics, because we didn't know how it would end. But then this track is me looking back in retrospect and kind of just laughing at this person and saying, you are quite pathetic, really, that it's kind of funny now looking back at the things that you did, even though it was kind of scary at the time, that we got the last laugh at the end of the day. And it's a very sarcastic song, and I feel like that's the kind of good thing about the past song. That this and The Shadow Man are two tracks where I'm kind of looking back in retrospect at things that were once kind of very sad and scary and upsetting, and now kind of laughing at it and saying, actually in retrospect this is quite bizarre and I know the truth, I'm old now. So it's about looking back at the past but also in the present, moving on, and it's about maturing and growth, and I feel like that's a theme I continue throughout the whole album, and that's an important thing. Okay, track 5, and moving on to the present section, is titled Golden Years. Now Golden Years was the first song I wrote for this album. I knew it would be the lead single, it was the first idea that I had, and it's the idea that kind of based the whole album. Two of my favourite songs, at least at that time, were Glass on the Hill by Ed Sheeran and Summer 69 by Bryan Adams, and those two songs are kind of about looking back at childhood and that those teen years, the best years of your life, people always say. And I kind of was thinking about that, and I was like, well, back then you hear all these things about how good childhoods were for people in the 80s and 90s, and now you look at the youth of today and it's very miserable, it's very bleak, it's very depressed. And I'm kind of doing a track, it's kind of like, you know what, everyone has issues and people need to talk, people need to split up, and it's okay to express how you feel, and it's okay to kind of say that thing, and it's a more universal song. A lot of my songs are mostly anecdotal and focused on my life and my feelings, whereas this one, it's broad, it's to everyone who's ever struggled or had hardship in their life, which is 99.9% of the planet, pretty much. Unless you're like, I don't know, Prince George. I don't know how much hardship he's had, really. Anyway. Right, so track 6 is called If I Have You. Now, this is a more upbeat kind of country track. This is a more light-hearted track, and I kind of realised that whenever I write about someone else's song, and you'd even seen this with the track list so far, Nightmare Neighbour, Shadow Man, Heartbreaking, it's negative songs about people, and I kind of noticed that was a trend with Sega Progress, like, all of the kind of the Love Up stuff was quite negative, kind of U-Turn, Warn You was quite negative, Persona, like, literally every time I'm talking about someone else is something negative, so I actually wanted to do a track for once where I'm actually positive about the people in my life and my friends, and this is kind of a more fun, kind of cheesy, kind of ode to them. It's more upbeat. I really like the hook in this one, what I was able to do with it. It's, again, I think the Keeley absolutely just stepped it up with this album. I think the instrumentals of Progress were great for what they were, but with this, I really like the sound that we were able to create, and there's a coherency, there's a consistency as well that he was able to create, so I think that once you hear the album, you understand what I mean. Okay, track number 7 is titled The Number Crunch, and this is a bizarre one, a bit different, because it's kind of a return to the early Broadband format, actually, where I'm rapping on the verses with a vocal hook. It's very similar to Change the Tide, kind of in tone. It's a very upbeat track, it's a really fun one. It's kind of a track about in school and kind of the positivity, and although later tracks will kind of delve into kind of some of the more negative aspects and more some of the fears, but this is like the party, the celebration, the number crunch is like this ticking kind of bomb until the implosion, and it's a really fun one. There's a great energy to the track, and but there's also kind of some undertones in there, and there's some serious bits I'm kind of reflecting on my journey, kind of the 8 years history of me in the Scorpion, and that kind of, trajectory, the rises, the falls. So there are some more serious bits in there. There's a bit where it kind of like slows down a bit, but yeah, it's a really fun one. I'm really happy with what Nakili did. This was one where like Nakili just did the instrumental for me. I got a hook, and I was really excited about this one. So yeah. 8 is called Keep Smiling. This is a hard one to kind of elaborate on and explain without being too personal. The song about there being underlying issues in a relationship that are clear, but you're not speaking those words, you're not saying that, you're kind of going through emotions day after day and ignoring the obvious in that sort of sense, and it's like you know it's not what it used to be, and you know it's kind of in a different way now, but you're not addressing that, and you're just being blind and oblivious to it, even though you and those people know the reality. So it's a very hard one for me to do. It's a guitar track, it's a kind of acoustic, it's very much a stripped back song. It's quite a contrast to a lot of the other instrumentals, something like If I Have You, or Golden Years, and Long Aston, where they're very more upbeat instrumentals. So I wanted that kind of moment, that kind of intimate, kind of smaller song, and I feel like it's a very important one to me, and it's actually the last track I wrote for the album, so it's a very important one. Okay, now we have track 9, moving on to the future section. Now the future section was a lot harder for me to work about because, well, the past, it's already happened, and the present is probably the easiest because you're literally living through it. So the future, I kind of went through a mix. Track 9 is called New Frontier. New Frontier is a track about me moving from school to college, and kind of me talking about my time in education and kind of the regrets and the avenues that I wish I would have pursued, and then also the things I'm thankful for in that sense, but then that relief that I'm ready for the next step and that I'm ready to take on. It's very old folk, it's very traditional, and I kind of like the sound. It's very much a ballad, and it's very much a great one. It was going to be a single, but I felt that it made more sense to be an album track, and Heartbreaking was a better single. So not that I'm dissing the song, I feel like I'm not really saying that I was going to be a single, then I got rid of it, but yeah, that's what New Frontier is about. Then we got Find Your Way Part 2. Now, I've noticed I've got a lot of trends in my albums going on here, We got the kind of don't say a word in one of the songs. The song kind of degrading people. I've kind of noticed. But another theme I do is that I do a sequel to one of my original songs. I made it out alive. Of course, I did the Be Stronger rewritten. Progress Sake of Progress, I did the rewrite of Waves. And then here I'm doing Find Your Way again. Whereas the Be Stronger didn't, and Waves did not keep a lot in line with the original. They were pretty much same instrumental and same hook, and that was the only similarity, especially with Waves, where they were completely different themes going on with both those tracks. But with Find Your Way, it's called Find Your Way Part 2, so it's not Find Your Way rewritten. It's kind of a sequel, and it's me retrospecting on that kind of idea of like, I was so scared then that I had to find my direction, knew exactly who I wanted to be at only 13, when in reality, now I don't need to find my way. I don't need to be scared. I can just live life each day at a time, and that's the mindset that I'm kind of following. And my future, I don't fear it because it's so far away, and I'm more focusing on the present and taking each day at a time and those little steps, and we'll see where we get. And I think that's the right mindset to have. So that's kind of the theme of Find Your Way Part 2. It's the longest song, I think, or at least one of the most wordy song, definitely, and it's got more rap involved in it as well. Penultimate track 11, is called Replicate. Now, Replicate is the song going the furthest into the future, and this is kind of a sequel to Always Been You from Progress Sake of Progress. It's a track about kind of fear that I won't be able to build out my life that I was given, and you kind of look into one day, 20, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, when I build my own family and I have my own life, and it's like kind of, will I be able to recreate the hand that I've been dealt, and will I be able to replicate even a fraction of what I've been given? And that's kind of always been a fear, because nowadays you see the cost of living and all this, and it's even harder to settle down and to work, and I kind of worry, me being me, will I be able to pursue that? Will I be able to find love? Will I be able to do this? So as much as I said in the last song that I'm kind of taking each day at a time, I'm also very worried about the distant future, and it's something that I do always contend about. And I think this song is a more kind of traditional folk. It's more sad, it's more of a ballad. A lot of the future songs are quite sad, which is quite a sad testament to life, really. The past songs are more sarcastic and kind of good old timeless. The present songs are more upbeat and kind of in the moment, with Keep Smiling being the obvious exception. And then the future songs are more sad and the grim reality of life. And I'm kind of reiterating my point that teenage years are the best years of your life, even though I kind of debated that in the other track. But yeah, so Replicate, I had a really good time with it. It's not my favourite track, to be honest. I think it's important for what it stands for, and it's grown on me over time. The final track, and this was, I've got to tell a bit of a story. Now, the album, I usually do change my mind. I did a video on the second channel, Lewis of Content, Mature and Honesty, where I laid out the track list. And on that track list, you'll see, I think Keep Smiling didn't exist at this time. And Lying to Myself definitely didn't exist at this time. And what I did was that I think I moved some stuff around a bit. So I got rid of the track 12 that I was originally meant to have. And that track was meant to be called Who I Strive to Be. And it was going to be kind of like who I strive to be in my outlook of life. It was going to be a more upbeat song. But then this idea came of Lying to Myself. And this is a song where, again, it's a bit like Keep Smiling. It's a very personal one, and it's very hard to explain without giving away exactly what it's about, which I don't plan to do. So, Lying to Myself is a song about clinging on to past feelings, not being able to move past them, and it's that idea of like, how can I move on to the future? I'm in the last song of the future section, but I'm still so clinged on to feelings from Progress and Made It Out Alive, and it's that idea. This is a piano ballad, so it's pretty different to the rest of the songs, and it's just a brutally honest tell-all interview almost of like, I said that it was over, I said that these things are over, and there's lines that I kind of reference from Progress in some of the later tracks, and it's like, I can't move on to the future because I've still got these echoes from the past hitting me, and it's bringing it all wrapped up. But in the first track, I'm very much worried about the future. And then in the final track, I can't get to the future because I'm still being dragged back by the past. And I really like the thematicness, and I really like the storyline almost of this album. I think it's a lot more coherent, a lot more consistent than what I was doing with Progress Sega Progress, as much as that was a bold album. And this may not be for everyone. The kind of country folk sound might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I'm not kind of doing this album for anyone but me, really, which has always been the case. Music's always been for me, and I kind of really like the mix I went for in this album, because I think Progress Sega Progress Made It Out Alive, every track was like emotional, depressing, all about me. Progress Sega Progress, most of it was. This one, we've got a good mix of the really sad, intimate songs, which are mostly about my emotions, which, when they come, I feel like they hit more because of the fact that you've kind of, you know what I mean, been through the more fun ones, where there's a mix of like me being okay in life and then kind of the contrast. Yeah, that is the meaning behind the past, the present, and future. And I really hope you enjoyed this breakdown, because I think it was a really fun one for me to do as well, because I'm really proud of what I've done with this album. And the release of the album, I'm not going to say, because I'm recording this a bit in advance, so I don't know, but I will update on the community tab and all of that sort of stuff, so you can get to know. And then upcoming videos, I actually don't know, because again, I'm doing this in the future, but I'm going to be doing the Flower Boy ranking soon, I know that, and I'll be ranking every Pixar film at some point in like October, so yeah, I'll see you lot soon.